The Blue Houses.
Hello, Herr. I would like to relate some experiences that both I and my family had in these houses that were called Las Casas Azules. My name is Maria, but they call me Marie. When I was between 10 and 12 years old, my family rented a complex consisting of 3 houses. In the complex, there was a problem with the electricity transformer, so often the meter breakers would trip, and we would have no electricity in all 3 houses. When that happened, someone would have to go outside to reset the breaker and restore power to our mini neighborhood. The first to move in was my older sister and her family. They occupied the largest house, which had 3 bedrooms. One of these bedrooms was more isolated than the others, with one door leading to the patio and another to the living room, making it completely independent. At that time, my mother and I did not live there yet, but I used to visit my sister frequently to play with my nieces, who were the same age as me, since there is a 20-year difference between me and my sister. Because of these visits, I was assigned that separate room. I was set up with a bunk bed, a dresser, and given some decorations. One night, after an argument with my brother-in-law, my sister decided to spend the night with me in my room. She closed the door that led to the living room, leaving only the one that connected to the patio as access. I've always had trouble falling asleep, so that night I stayed up reading on the top bunk. My sister, still upset about the fight, settled into the bottom bed. At one point, as was usually the case, the lights went out, and unable to continue reading, I tried to fall asleep, although it took longer than usual. Finally, sleep overcame me. However, I was awakened by my sister. Calmly but still disturbed by her fight, she said, "Marie, were you awake? What did Jose want?" Surprised, I replied, "What are you talking about?" She continued, "I saw him right next to the bed. He was wearing a hooded sweater, and he was there for a long time, smoking. I pretended to be asleep, and finally fell asleep waiting for him to leave. Did he say anything to you?" "You're crazy. No one has come in here. That door hasn't opened and the other one is sealed," I replied. To this day, we call each other crazy. My sister is still convinced that someone was standing next to her while she pretended to be asleep. This experience did not happen to me directly, but to my brother-in-law. One winter night, one of those nights when it is already completely dark at 6 o'clock in the evening, I remember it was Friday. My sister had picked us up from school, then we went to the supermarket to buy groceries for dinner, and then we stopped by my mother's house around 7:30. When we got home, we saw my brother-in-law sitting on the sidewalk, looking lost in thought, looking surprised and shaky. He was smoking at an unusual speed, and next to him was a pack that looked like it had just been opened but was already half full. As we got off, my mother was the first to ask, "Jose, what's the matter with you?" He simply replied, "I was waiting for them." My sister inquired, "Why were you waiting for us?" To which he replied, "I'm afraid to come in." At my sister's insistence as to the reason, he narrated, "I arrived in a hurry, left the keys on the table and went to the bathroom. I was just starting to relax when the power went out. I went out to check the meter, and to my surprise, someone had put a lock on it, so I went back for the keys. But as I looked into Marie's room, I saw someone leaning out the window, waving goodbye. I ran out and didn't want to go back in." At the time, we laughed at this episode. My brother-in-law had always been a serious person, not one for jokes. To see him frightened like that seemed unusual to us. We thought it was just an excuse not to enter a house without electricity. Now I tell you the following experience. The house next door to my sister's used to be empty or rented for short periods. So when my mother and I moved into the last house in the complex, I adopted that house as my secret lair. This new house we were renting had only one room, and since we would now be living near my sister, I didn't see the need to keep the room I had in her house. No one wanted that space, so it was closed off. The new little house had a main entrance and a door to the yard. I usually entered through the patio door, which had no lock and opened easily. But when it closed, it would hit the ground due to a bad cut. So, to close it all the way, I had to pull it hard from the outside and pull my hand back quickly. One day when we didn't go to school, I was playing in my den when my mother told me that we were going clothes shopping with my sister. As I was picking up, I heard my sister calling out my name urgently. As I stepped out and closed the back door, I felt as if something was pushing hard, twisting my foot, and in the process, catching my ring toe between the door and the frame. The pain was immense, and the toe turned purple. Furious, I went to complain to my sister why I had rushed so much, and she said, "What are you talking about? I didn't yell at you. You were playing with the little neighbor girl, and I didn't want to bother you." I froze when I heard about the other girl, since I was all alone. I also remembered that it was impossible for the wind to move that heavy door, as all the windows and doors were sealed. Finally, I tell you that within days of vacating our little neighborhood, we were planning to move just 2 blocks away to a small but adequate apartment for my mother and me. By that time, my sister had already bought a house in a neighborhood quite far from our current home. I have always had cats. Since I was a child, I have felt a great affection and fascination for these animals. We had a cat named Vicenta, who had had kittens just a month and a half before. We opted not to take her immediately to our new home. It is well known that changes in environment can stress or frighten cats, and we didn't want Vicenta's 5 kittens to be orphaned. So we decided to move her at the end of the move. The move took us 3 days, as our new home was quite close. On the second day, I heard desperate meowing at the door. On my way out, I met Vicenta, who looked frightened. We assumed she was missing her kittens, so we decided to go get them and take them all to the new apartment. However, when I tried to carry Vicenta, she resisted, scratching me, and eventually ran away. I returned to the neighborhood and found all 5 kittens in their little bed, safe and sound, snuggled together. We waited for Vicenta until it got dark. Due to power problems, the neighborhood had no electricity, so we decided to leave the kittens there, waiting for Vicenta to come back for them. The next morning, I was awakened by Vicenta's meowing at the door. She was there, holding one of her kittens in her muzzle. I followed her back into the neighborhood and came upon a terrifying scene. 3 of the kittens were dead, their bodies in an advanced state of decomposition, as if they had been there for months. There were no signs of violence, and we ruled out the possibility of poison, as we have always had cats and never had a problem with rats. Besides, with a 9-month-old nephew in my sister's house, it would be unthinkable to use poison. After a while, I heard a faint meow. The 5th kitten was alive, hidden in a tube. When I pulled it out, Vicenta appeared, and we left that neighborhood, never to return. To this day, I still don't understand what happened to the kittens.
There's something in the house.
Hello, Herr. I would like to share with you one of the many experiences I have had throughout my life. There are some that I have managed to put behind me and others that I have yet to overcome. I hope it will be interesting to you and your followers. This happened about 6 months ago. Although it was not the first time I had experienced something like this time it was a little more intense. I live on the outskirts of my city, where there is a lot of vegetation and few people, as it is a place away from the urban noise. Due to its location, the fauna is very varied, and you can find several species of animals. One night, I was in my room with one of my brothers. Around 11 o'clock we went to sleep, each in his own bed. In the early morning, a feeling of being watched woke me up. I looked at my brother and noticed that he was also awake. We looked at each other and I asked him, "What's the matter? Why are you awake?" He turned his gaze to the window, lit by a bright, full moon. Before he could say anything, a piercing scream broke the silence. It came from the ground behind the house. It scared the hell out of me, as I had never heard anything like it before. It sounded as if someone was being tortured. The scream stopped for a moment, but then it sounded closer, as if it was approaching the window. Frightened, I moved closer to my brother, who was also trembling with fear. Finally, we were able to go back to sleep when the screaming stopped. However, the story doesn't end there. I used to work in a laundry where they also took care of dogs. This is located near my house and is a large place. In the back, there are two houses. One is the owner's house, and the other belongs to the caretaker. They are separated. One day, I was asked to stay overnight in the laundry room to take care of some puppies that had arrived that morning. The manager, like the boss, had a trip scheduled and offered me extra pay for the favor. I agreed and prepared to spend the night at the assigned house. I finished all my pending work at approximately 6 p.m. Then I showered, and once I was done, I prepared my dinner. I went to bed waiting for it to be time to sleep. The place was completely alone, except for the dogs. Suddenly, I heard a voice. It seemed strange to me since there was no one else. I thought it might be someone passing by, but what puzzled me was that the dogs started to get restless, as if they wanted to attack or chase someone. I was not too alarmed, thinking that perhaps they had seen some animal. However, shortly before falling asleep, I heard the dogs chasing something again. This time they seemed more aggressive, as if someone or something was threatening them. I went outside to see what was going on, but saw nothing in particular, so I went back to bed. At about 3 a.m., I heard that piercing scream again. To my surprise, all the dogs, both from nearby and distant houses, started barking. I am not exaggerating when I say that the atmosphere became tense and cold. The dogs I was guarding were barking ferociously into the darkness, and some were lingering at the doors, as if trying to keep something or someone from entering. The situation lasted almost 2 hours until sleep overcame me. When I woke up, I went to check on the dogs and noticed something strange in the kennels where they slept. It looked like someone had tried to break in. There were scratches on the wall and broken branches near the place. I was sure the dogs had not caused that damage, as the grounds were well fenced. What really scared me were the tufts of hair and bloodstains on the ground. I have no idea what caused all that, but I assure you, it was not normal. That night, there was a foul smell in the air, like death. To top it off, I found 3 headless chickens on the road. Since that day, it has been difficult for me to sleep peacefully.
The Sage Shadow.
Hi, I'm Iker. I'm from Barcelona, and I hope you will take a moment to read about an experience I had. A few years ago, when I was only 7 years old, my family and I moved to a new house. It didn't take me long to notice something strange. Every night, I would hear whispering, as if from a woman, and a noise that sounded like keys banging against something. Scared, I told my mother, hoping she would believe me, but she simply told me it was all in my head. I tried to convince myself that she was right and decided to ignore those strange noises. 7 years later, however, the situation changed. One night, looking out the window, I clearly saw the silhouette of an older woman holding some keys. I ran to my mother, and to my surprise, she confessed that she had also observed her. Concerned, my mother decided to contact the former owner of the house. The man revealed something shocking. His wife had died there of a heart attack. That news left us rather uneasy, to be honest. The man had left the house because he could not bear the pain of his loss. My mother, being cautious, brought in a priest to do some sort of spiritual cleansing. After that, there was a sense of calm in the atmosphere. A few months passed without incident, and we thought it was all over. But a week ago, I saw her again. The same shadow, the same figure. I have no idea what to do or who to turn to. By telling you this, I just hope to find some answers, or at least feel that I am not alone facing this situation. Thank you for your time. Best regards, Iker.